Okay, Pat, I'm going to show you how to organize your grade book so you know from now on. So I'm going to grab all the discussion boards or forums, whatever you call them, and you're just going to grab them as so, whether you're using them or not, because they all have to be under the discussion forum category. And you know the category is the one with the folder with the two arrows. That's the one that gets your weight, okay? So let's see if we got all the discussions. I think this is the last one. We scroll down. There's no other ones. So we come down here, move selected items to. We choose discussion forums. Let the computer work, and you're going to go to a screen. It's going to say recalculating grades. Once it's 100%, you hit continue. Now we have all our discussion forums under the discussion forum category. And you said that your discussions were 20%. So in here, we have to change that to 0.2. We scroll to the bottom, you hit save. If you don't, you'll lose your changes. Now, if you're using the certain discussion boards, they take a 1.0. If you're not using them, you must put a 0. Because the 1.0 means I'm using it and please calculate it at a 20% weight. So right now you're telling Moodle, their gradebook, to calculate every single discussion board because they all have 1.0s. So remember, the 1.0 is not the weight. The weight is 20%. The 1.0 means I'm using it and please calculate it at a 20% weight. Okay, so you need to go back and change some of these to 0 because I don't think you're using all of these. And make sure you always go to the bottom and hit Save Changes. Okay, so you're going to follow the same steps for all your items. There shouldn't be any floating items. The orientation item or orientation quiz has its own category and it's called non-graded orientation items. You just click on it and you don't touch anything. You wait till it's done and hit continue. Now, these look like tests to me. All these exercises, so I'm assuming that they are quizzes, but I'm going to skip them for a second. I'm going to take all these assignments. Again, you have to take everything whether you're using it or not. If you're not using it, you put a 0 next to it. That's all. Okay, I think I got all the assignments. And I'm going to move that to assignments. Hit continue. I'm just going to check. It looks like, oh, you do have 2 classes. I didn't see this. You don't use assignments, so all those need to take 0s. This is fine, it's 0, so make sure you change all these to 0s and then hit save. Let me see what other, so you have discussions, term paper, and 3 essays. So it looks like all these 3 essays, I'm assuming. Yeah, 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to move those to essays. And your essays are 60%. Now, if those aren't the right essays, because you have a lot going on in here, you'll have to move the correct ones, but I'm putting 60%. I'm assuming that you're using all three, and I'm hitting save. And then all of these I'm going to put into the quizzes because they are, even though they say exercises, they're labeled as a quiz. So I'm going to move, and I don't see that you use quizzes, but it doesn't matter. We should still have this nice and neat because students get really confused when they're looking at their gradebook. Let me know if you're not using these exercises because we should hide them from the students. So when they see their gradebook, they're not seeing a list of things you're not even using. Even if you have the 0, they still see it. So we should just hide them completely. We're not deleting anything. We just hide because you never know. The next person that teaches this course may use it. So we're going to move those to quizzes. And let me just check again. Yeah, it doesn't seem like you have quizzes. So I'm going to actually take the liberty to hiding this whole category. So this is a 0, and I'm going to hit save. And then I'm going to hide the entire category so that it's not shown to the students. And you should really, just for keeping things consistent, I would put 0s in all of this so that the next time they're not all, if you put the 0s, they should stay for the next semester. But this whole category is hidden. The essays are 60. Let me see, do you have, it doesn't look like you have a midterm, but I am going to put this in a midterm category. These are lessons, so these should go, they're not graded, but they still need to be put somewhere. The final exam lesson, I'll just put it together with the final exam. But let me just move this to lessons. Now these lessons are 0, but the students look at them, so you can, even if you have 0s here, they can still see them in the classroom. It just means that they're not going to be graded, so these should be changed to 0s. Now the final exam, I'm going to grab even the lesson and just put it in the final exam folder, even though it doesn't seem like you use the final exam. Let it do its thing, hit continue. Now, all these instructions and your e-text and all that goes into non-graded items. So I'm selecting all of them, and I'm going to put them in non-graded. It looks like we forgot one piece of the midterm, so we'll get to that in a second. Move all that into not non-graded orientation, but non-graded items. And then I'll move this midterm into the midterm category. Term paper. I don't know which one is your term paper. Let me see if I could check under essays. Yeah, it doesn't look like there is a term paper. So you're going to have to, maybe you didn't create the assignment yet, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to move. How do you move things? You grab the arrow to move the whole category. I'm going to move the category to the bottom, so only the categories you're using are at the bottom, so they line up with the course total. So you don't use assignments. Homework should be 0 because you don't have a homework. So I change that and I hit save. And then next you use 3 essays. So let's see. Quizzes you don't use. Essays you use. So grab the arrow. When you move it to the side box. Because if you move it here, it's going to merge with discussion. So you're going to move it here so it's its own category. So you don't use, so this should be 0. Lab work you don't use, that should be 0. Test you don't use, that should be 0. Midterm you're not using, so 0. Term project, 0. Lesson, 0. Exam, 0. Participation, 0. Non-graded, 0. Perfect. So we hit save there. And if I'm not mistaken, you do have a term paper. So I'm going to move the term paper category to the bottom. And you actually have to put your item in there. So it looks like you didn't create it yet. And it should go under there. So now you have all the categories you're using: discussion, essays, and term paper. And your term paper category is 20% as well. So this will be turned to 0.2. Save. So now all these categories are zeroed out. Means there's no weight because you're not using them. What you're using is 20. Again, go in here. If you're using it, 1.0. If you're not using it, put a 0. Hit save. Essay, 60%. Make sure these are the 3 essays. Term paper, I don't see the term paper here, so maybe you didn't create the item yet. So that term paper should go in here. You hit save changes. Now you go to view, and in view you can see, well, let me actually go back to setup 1 second. I like to put the orientation right above your first category you're using so that the numbers line up. So I'm going to move non-graded orientation, and I'm going to move it above discussion forums so that it lines up. You have grades, grades, grades instead of having the orientation grade in the middle of the grade book. So now I'm in view, and you know everything from orientation quiz to the right you're using 20, 60, 20, your course total. When you want to go into discussion forums, you come here, you have your discussion forums. If you do them manually, I think you use the Joule grader. I'm hoping you do. The grades copy over to the grade book automatically if you're using the Joule grader. And you know, to get to the Joule grader, you go to administration and course administration, and Joule grader is at the bottom. So it looks like you haven't put any grades in yet, but you want to do them in Joule grader. Just in case you don't know how to use Joule grader, you pick what you're grading, like let's say discussion 1.1, Erica didn't do anything, give her a 0. I'd usually just put no posts, then you save grade and next. But in this case, I'm not going to put a grade because I don't know if this isn't one that you used. So it looks like you didn't use this one. I'm going to go to 1.2. This is a list of your students. Not sure if you use this, but you should be able to see all the posts here. So you would grade, you would pick the assignment you want to grade, go through